So to kind of recap what we talked about on Thursday, I think it was. We went over how to build a REST API and some of the theory behind that, right?
Yeah.
So what we ended up building is these kind of sets of routes. So you can get a list of products, you can get a single product, you can post or add a product, update a product, or delete a product. So this is kind of what we were building, right? With that, we didn't really hook it up into the UI yet, right? But I showed you how to use Postman to go ahead and test your routes. So that's what we've hooked up there. Okay. So today, what I want to work towards, our goal is to take this API which we built and actually hook a UI, build a UI that works with it. Okay. So today our focus is on building a UI for this, and then on Tuesday, tomorrow, we'll look about how to make your server validation, how to validate some of the data easier using a package called Joy. So today we'll talk about the AJAX and how to set up some of these pages, and then tomorrow we'll talk about Joy for server-side validation. Cool.
Yep.
So depending on what your schedule, depending on what your pacing was for first semester, you may have already been introduced to Joy, or if you've done work kind of outside of class, you may have already been introduced to AJAX. And the whole point of AJAX is to create a communication or do communication between the front end and the back end. Where I want to start, I'm going to start with this video, which is going to go over some of the theory of what AJAX is. AJAX has been around for a good long time. So to put things into context with this video, he's actually going to talk about using AJAX with PHP, which is around the time that we started using this heavily. That was one of the more popular technologies out there was PHP. So this is why he's doing that with them. So the deal is that this AJAX tool has been around for actually a while. And it actually can, as it turns out, it can be used really with any technology. Is basically more what I'm trying to say. So he uses it with PHP, but you can really use AJAX with any backend framework, and you should. Okay, so AJAX is an essential sort of technique. That regardless of what web page you're building, regardless of what website you're building, or what the back-end technology that's implementing it, whether it be C# on the back end, or PHP on the back end, or Node or JavaScript on the back end, or even if it's Ruby or whatever it may be on the back end, AJAX is something you want to use because it makes the user experience so much better, and it means that you can do a lot of things that you couldn't do without it. Actually. So there's a few details in there, obviously that are specific to PHP. But what I want you to get out of that is really kind of what AJAX is and what the benefits of it are, right? Right. So one of the most common ways that this comes in is, let's say I want to like anything, right? I want to like something on the internet or favorite it or whatever it may be, whether it be Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or YouTube even. If I want to like something, that always will be an AJAX request, because if we were to refresh the page, right, if you like something, there would be all sorts of problems, right? I wouldn't expect clicking the like button to completely refresh the page.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of places where this is a kind of a must-have tool. including, I think, one of the things you saw with the contact form back in a previous example. Remember what it did was it scrolled all the way to the top of the page when you submitted it?
Yeah.
Right? So we can avoid that scrolling to the top of the page, kind of resetting the context by doing things through AJAX. So the reality is that most forms that we submit nowadays, nearly all of them will go through AJAX instead of being just a normal submit. So this is something that's been around since '99. So it's a really, really important technique. In every website uses it, but yeah, it's been around since '99. So that means that at this point it is what, like almost 21 years old? It's over 20 years old. I've still seen a lot of textbooks that don't really cover AJAX. I've still seen an awful lot of developers that especially can go through textbooks, courses, and not know about this technique, but it is a really, really must know technique. Now, you can use this method, right? So using jQuery AJAX is one way to do it. Now, obviously, that's a wrapper around the XHR object, which you could do underneath, right? You could do this without jQuery, but if you were using the XHR object directly, it would be kind of messy. Okay. There's a new API kind of on the block, which was introduced I think just a few years ago now. There's a new API that kind of replaces the old XHR object, which actually is a lot cleaner, and it does use promises. It's only supported in newer browsers, but it's kind of the way that people have started to switch. So we went over how to do it here with AJAX and jQuery, and that's how I'm going to do those examples. But I do want to make you aware of what the new alternative to jQuery is for these kind of things. So the new thing that's out there is what's called the Fetch API. Okay, and so the Fetch API is actually now built into it's actually built into your browser, built in as part of JavaScript. So you don't need jQuery or any sort of third-party library to use the Fetch API. You just need a newer browser. That's it. So this again doesn't work on older browsers like IE. So that may be one thing to keep in mind. The way that Fetch works is very similar to the jQuery.ajax method, but there are some differences. So I would stress that it's worth reading up on what those differences are, and MDN's got a really good write-up on what those differences are. So you probably want to end up learning both, honestly, at this point. Learn the jQuery method as well as learn the Fetch API in what some of those differences are. So I will take your assignments. You can either use jQuery or you can use Fetch. So either of those are an alternative, but if you want to be more modern, you would use the Fetch. So I'm going to start with this one. So what I want to do with the rest of the time that we have available is start to apply this stuff in terms of building pages to implement CRUD on our website.